Welcome in to the Gathering Echo and to New Testament Church here in Gastonia, North Carolina. My name is Michael Hawkins. I am coming to you live tonight, and we are looking forward to wrapping up a thought that I began on Sunday. Certainly, we thank you so much for joining us. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe or hit the notification button there on your Facebook. Share our videos. Certainly continue to push those out there. We appreciate everyone that does that. Also, too, you can look at the link below. There is a Subsplash link that you can click on, and you can actually go there and give. You can also access prior services or sermons, teachings that have been put out there. And soon you'll be able to find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and some other platforms, right? So, again, thank you so much for joining us. We're thankful for those who are here tonight with us live in person. So, like I said, tonight I do want to dive in a little bit deeper on what I started to talk about on Sunday. And the title of the message was The Power of Words. And this is kind of part two, right? Just trying to wrap up this thought here. I sort of ended on Sunday with trying to bridge the gap between this negative self-talk that we get into and learning how to turn that into self-compassion. And one of the things I did not get to is this idea is not something that's unique to Christianity. It's not unique to positive psychology or anything like that. This is something that's been around for a long time, and that our ancient ancestors understood as something that was necessary for us to learn how to correct, and that's our speech. I'm talking about our speech. And the Buddhist idea, they have what they call samavaka, which is right speech. That's what that means. And so right speech is one of the components of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is kind of the Buddha's idea of this is how you get to nirvana, or this is how you get to sort of this self-actualized place, right? But it serves as a guide to ethical and spiritual living, right? Right speech emphasizes the importance of using words that are truthful, kind, and helpful. It encourages practitioners to avoid false, harsh, divisive, or idle speech. And of course, that's stuff that we hear in Scripture as well, right? So again, this idea is not necessarily unique to Christianity. It's not unique to what we're doing here. But one of the other things is mindful communication. In Buddhism, they place a strong emphasis on mindfulness, which is basically awareness, right? It's being aware of what I'm doing, what I'm saying, where I'm at, who I'm with, my audience, all those types of things. But it's really just kind of an awareness, which extends to communication. So mindful communication involves being fully present and aware of our words, intentions, and the impact that they have on ourselves and others. I'm going to read that again because I sort of messed that up. But mindful communication involves being fully present and aware of our words, intentions, and the impact they have on ourselves and others. And so this kind of folds back into that, truthful, kind, helpful things that we're wanting to say. And the mindful piece of it is, what am I saying? What words am I using? What is the intention behind what I'm saying? And what kind of impact will that have on whoever hears it? And that includes yourself. And that was really my main focus on Sunday, is because what happens is and honestly, a lot of times we don't talk negatively about other people. It's like you'll meet people like that in your life where they kind of talk about everybody, right? They use harsh language about pretty much anyone and everyone that they meet, and that probably goes into some really deep issues about themselves. But regardless, they don't necessarily most people don't necessarily sit around and talk about other people, or they don't talk harshly to people in general when they're out in public or something like that. But they will engage in this negative self-talk. Most of us will engage in some sort of negative self-talk, or almost like, it sounds like self-hatred at times. But we will tear ourselves down way before we'll tear somebody else down. But regardless, this mindfulness comes in when we really anytime we say anything, right? It should be an awareness that we have every time that we speak, every time that we interact with somebody, the words that we're using, the intentions that are behind our words, and then how can that impact the other person, and how can it impact me? How is what I'm saying right now going to impact me? Is it going to make me feel better? Is it going to make me feel encouraged? Is it going to lift my mood, or is it going to bring me down? Is it going to put me in a low place? Is it going to continue to perpetuate my stress or my anxiety, or if I have depression or whatever? And I'm going to be aware of those words I'm using when we possess it like that, right? That's a wrong way to think about anxiety, depression, things like that, stress, whatever. You say it's my anxiety. No. It's just I'm experiencing anxiety, okay? So, but the experience that I'm having is that, are the words that I'm saying going to make it worse, or are they going to make it better? It encourages us to pause and reflect before speaking, ensuring that words align with the principles of kindness and compassion. And again, we're talking about, this is the teachings of Buddhism, right? But it sounds a lot like things that Jesus would have said, right? But do they align with kindness and compassion? And can I pause and think about what I'm about to say? Because that's something that, for me, I've had to learn, over a really long, well, I should say really long, but a long period of time, right? And lots of saying the wrong thing, speaking too quickly, speaking out of turn, whatever you want to call it. But I've had to learn that the hard way. And especially in relationships, especially in my marriage, that's one of those things where, man, you figure out really quickly if you don't have something nice to say, right? Like your mom used to say, then don't say anything at all. And it really makes an impact on your relationship with your spouse. And so again, that's that reflecting and thinking, especially if you're in an emotion, right? If you're in an emotional state, and look, you can be elated, you can be so happy, you can be on cloud nine, but that is not your equilibrium, right? That's not your homeostasis. That's not your normal balanced thinking, right? Okay, so you may be up in the air, you may be just flying high. That's also a time to stop, reflect, and think about what you're going to say, right? Don't just go running off at the mouth just because you're excited, right? It's the same thing with being angry or being very sad, or those different emotions that we experience especially when they're profound or when they're strong. We want to make sure that we're stopping to think about, what am I saying? What's kind of my thought process here? What's going through my head? Recognizing the power of thoughts and words. So Buddhism teaches that our thoughts and words have a significant impact on our mental and emotional well-being. Negative self-talk or harmful speech can create suffering and hinder our spiritual progress. Conversely, kind and compassionate words can promote inner peace and harmony. There was another, self-compassion and loving kindness. This is called metta. Metta, that in the Buddhist tradition. Metta, Buddhism teaches the practice of metta, or loving kindness meditation, which involves extending feelings of goodwill and love to oneself and others. This practice includes repeating positive affirmations and phrases like, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be free from suffering, to cultivate self-compassion and compassion for others. Sounds a lot like prayer, right? That's obviously meditation is a type of prayer, but it sounds a lot like prayer. Those are the types of things that, and of course, we when we pray for others, when I pray for others, I should say, I'm praying those positive things, right? I'm praying those positive words. I'm praying these positive vibes, these positive energies. That's what I'm sending towards other people. I've talked about this before, but your words and your thoughts, they are energy, and they do leave you. They do project out of you because you emit this energy. And Josh, a lot of times he'll say, prayers and good vibes sent. That's his kind of thing, right? And I love that because that is exactly what it is. When you start praying for someone, it is the Spirit of God, or it's the Spirit of Christ that is literally exuding out of you, and it's going to that person. You're sending it to them wherever they are, and it can have a profound impact on those people. Silence and contemplation. This is one that's tough, right? It's hard sometimes for us to be quiet. I know for me personally, it's very difficult to be quiet. I'm a talker. I enjoy talking. I enjoy, socializing with others. I enjoy having conversation with others. I enjoy, just going back and forth, whatever the case may be. But I enjoy the talking. And sometimes, and I think we do this in prayer too, sometimes it's difficult to go to prayer or go to a place of meditation and not say anything, not have anything to say at all, because we've got a million things to say. We have a million requests to make to God. We have a million different things that we want to talk to God about, and it's sometimes difficult to do that. But in some Buddhist traditions, periods of silence and contemplation are encouraged. One person that I admire, which I never actually got to meet him or anything, but I loved his writings, and his name's Brendan Manning. He would go on these silent prayer retreats, and he would talk about just the impact that those moments had on his spiritual life, and how he could go to a place, never say a word, but God reveal things to him that he had never ever heard or seen before. And feel God in a way that and experience Him in a way that he had never experienced Him before. And he never said a word. He's just literally there in silence the whole time that you're there for the retreat. Most of the time they're out in the wilderness, or out in some cave somewhere or whatever, some mountain range somewhere, and he'd go up into a cave. And I mean, he's in some of his books you can read, he's out there at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's there under the moonlight, and it's just, boom, God's just moving on him. He's weeping. He's having this encounter with God, and it's in that stillness, it's in that quietness, where he's able to experience God without any words, without saying anything. These practices allow individuals to cultivate inner stillness, observe their thoughts and self-talk, and make conscious choices to replace negative self-talk with affirming and compassionate thoughts and words. To replace. It gives you the time and the space to think about the things that we are saying, whether it's to ourselves or it's to other people, and how do I replace those, or what do I replace them with, right? Replace them with words of compassion, replace them with words of encouragement, that kind of thing. And you can do this with your family. You can do this with your spouse. You can do this with your children, right? Maybe you use language towards them that you feel like is less encouraging than it should be. Maybe it's not so much that you say harsh things or you say hard things, or you're being especially evil or heinous in your speech towards them, but maybe you feel like, hey, I could change this up a little bit, right? I could encourage them a little bit more, whatever. Take the time to go to this still place, go to this quiet place. And Teresa did a great job of talking about this not that long ago, just talking about prayer and going into that place, the quiet place, and allowing God to equip you, right, with the words of encouragement, with the words of compassion, with the words of love, tenderness and mercy and kindness, all that, so that you can pour that out on the people that are around you, and of course, again, on yourself as well. Replacing it with maybe that unwanted language. And then a non-attachment to self. This is a big-time Buddhist idea. So Buddhism emphasizes the concept of anatta, or non-self, which suggests that the ego is an illusion. Now, that one to me is good. This little part right here, I like this because this speaks. Take up your cross, deny yourself, and come follow me. Right? This is one of those things for me where it's like, and don't get me wrong, we have the ego to contend with, right? But the ego is an illusion. That's kind of their thought process. And Brennan Manning talks about the imposter, and the imposter. I think that's what he calls it, the imposter. In Abba's Child is the name of that book. But he talks about the imposter and how this is I'm getting a head nod from Lynn, so we're good. The imposter is the ego, right? It's the illusion. It's not the real you. It's not the true you. Okay? It's the piece of you that you put out here in front for everybody else to see, but it's not the true you. It's not the true capital S self. So the ego is an illusion. This perspective encourages practitioners to let go of rigid self-identifications and self-criticism, fostering a more compassionate and forgiving attitude toward oneself. The rigid self-identifications and self-criticisms. Now, I know that everybody in here, everybody listening online, I know that you have some opinions about yourself, right? Some ways that you identify yourself. You may not ever say them out loud to other people, but I know that you have these markers inside of you that you say, this is who I am. This is me, right? And maybe you hate it. Maybe you really don't like it, right? But that's how you see yourself. That's how you perceive yourself. And it is set in stone in your mind, right? And that's what we're talking about, this self-identification, the rigidity of that. And of course, the self-criticism. I mean, we're so hard on ourselves. We will absolutely beat ourselves with an iron rod at any chance that we get, any opportunity that we have to take ourselves down a notch for whatever reason, right? Maybe it's your life experiences. It's the things that you've gone through. It's the circumstances you've been through. It's bad relationships in the past. It's folks not teaching you how to love yourself. It's folks not teaching you how to communicate with yourself, how to talk with yourself, how to appreciate yourself, all those things. Maybe you learned it from a parent who was also hypercritical of themselves, right? Maybe you learned it from a parent who identified themselves as worthless or I'm a piece of trash, I'm no good, I'm not smart, I'm not strong, I'm not capable, I'm not a good provider, I'm not a good nurturer, whatever. They this long laundry list of all these things that they are not, right? Maybe you learned that self-talk from them. They don't even have to teach you, they don't even have to say anything about you or to you about yourself, right? They can literally say those things about themselves, and then you learn, I guess that's how we identify ourselves. I guess that's what if mom's a bad this, that, and the other, then I must be a bad this, that, and the other, right? I'm an extension of her, or just looking at yourself and finding those things that you critique within yourself. So, how does this affect us, right? Well, it affects us on every level. And the reason being is because we're a holistic being, right? You have to take the holistic approach to your life, okay? So you can't just focus on the spiritual and then neglect the physical. You can't focus on the spiritual and neglect your body. You can't focus on your mind or your soul or however you want to call that, your emotions and the thoughts that you have. You can't focus on that and neglect the spiritual. And because there's no way to separate those things out from one another, because you are one being. There is no separation of you. Okay? So you are you at every level, right? Mind, body, and spirit. And that's not to say that, when we think about, Well, what about our body? You know, when we die, then the spirit soul comes out of the body. Yes, okay, I understand that. But right now, as you're walking and living on this plane, in this existence, in this reality, you are you, all of you. And there is no way to separate that out. And part of this, when we start talking about this self-talk, whether it's negative or positive, the effects that it can have on you are not just in your mind, and they're not just in your spirit, but it's in your body, it's in your emotions, it's literally every single part of you that it can begin to affect, or that it does affect. There's no beginning to it, right? It just happens. So effects on mood and emotional well-being. Research has consistently shown that negative self-talk characterized by self-criticism and pessimistic thinking is associated with higher levels of anxiety, depression, and stress. And that means that things in life are harder than they should be, right? Things in life are more difficult than they should be. You're going through, your normal life circumstances, and you've got whatever that stress is, whether it's stress from work, it's stress from family, it's stress in relationships, it's anxieties about the future, it's anxieties about, the past, right? It's depression because of whatever's going on, right? And you're experiencing all this stuff. Well, when you compound that with the negative self-talk and the criticism and all these things, all you're doing is increasing those levels, right? So you're increasing the anxiety, you're increasing that depression and stress. Obviously, on the flip side of that, positive self-talk, and this has been proven through research as well, that is characterized by self-encouragement and optimism, is linked to improved mood and emotional resilience. Now, resilience is how well you bounce back from things, okay? So when we think about resilience, we're thinking about how good are you at getting knocked down and then getting back up again, right? I get knocked down, but I get up again, and then we're going to keep it down. I get knocked down. Chumbawamba is the soundtrack to my life. Oh, sorry. Some of you guys in here don't know about that. But anyways, yeah, that's my song. That's my jam. Okay. Yeah, like how well do you do at getting knocked down, right? And then getting back up, Are you the righteous man who can get knocked down 7 times but gets up the 8th time, right? That is what resilience is. And when we talk positively to ourselves and to others, and we are more optimistic, then that resilience goes up, right? So how well do you handle getting angry and then coming back down, right? How well do you handle being saddened by a circumstance or a situation and then coming back out of that sadness into that state of equilibrium that I talked about earlier? Homeostasis, that's what we're looking for. That's what we crave, right? We want to be balanced. We don't want things to be tilted one way or the other. It's like the pleasure-pain balance, right? The funny thing about pleasure is that if there's too much pleasure, it can become painful. And then if there's too much pain, it almost becomes pleasurable. It's kind of weird, right? And now there is a point where the pain just stays painful, right? It doesn't. There's no pleasure in it whatsoever. But it's funny how that balance can go one way or the other. And if it's weighted too much for too long, right? Then we're out of balance. We don't have that homeostasis. Then things really start to go awry. And so it's the same way with your mood and your emotions, right? And that comes again from some of that self-talk, and that self-criticism. When we start to talk down and talk down and talk down, and then we start tilting to the one side, right? Then everything gets out of whack. So, impact on performance. Now, studies in sports psychology and performance psychology have demonstrated that positive self-talk can enhance performance in various domains. That includes sports, academics, and professional settings. Now, an interesting thing about, there was a study that was done on some folks that were participating in, I believe it was gymnastics, and they had a group who were encouraged, right? So they were spoken to positively. They were told, you can do it, here we go, good effort, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And in fact, these folks were injured or coming off of a previous injury, right? Okay, so specifically, I think some of them had like ankle injuries. So I guess that's maybe especially bad in gymnastics, okay? So they had this ankle injury, and they're being encouraged in all of this. Now, you think about that. Think about somebody that's coming off of an injury or coming back from an injury, rather, right? It's like in sports. If you'll watch, I love to watch college basketball. You watch college basketball, if you got a guy who hurt his leg in the preseason, or you got a guy who hurt his leg sometime in the season and he gets to come back, right? Those first couple games back, or that first game back at the very least, he's going to be sort of timid, right? He's going to have some trepidation about, can I jump as high as I could before? Can I land on my leg this certain way, or whatever the case may be, right? And so in this group, they were encouraging these folks, and then they had the control group, which had no injuries whatsoever, right? Just a normal bunch of gymnasts, and they were doing their thing. No words of encouragement, but no negativity either, okay? So it was just leave them alone, let them do their thing. And the ones who had the previous injury but were encouraged actually outperformed the ones who had no injury whatsoever, but also had no words of encouragement, had no push, no positive speak going towards them, right? So there is this, what would you call it? I've talked about it before, actually, with it was an experiment that was done in Japan. When you reject or you tend to not say anything at all, right? Then it actually creates that rejection creates. In the experiment in Japan, it was a bowl of rice, and the rice actually rotted. And it rotted quicker than the rice that they spoke negatively to. But when you do provide that encouragement or provide those words of positivity, that kindness and compassion that you're showing towards yourself or others, then you're going to see an improvement in performance, whatever that means, right? Reduction in stress. We talked a little bit about that already, but positive self-talk techniques such as cognitive restructuring and mindfulness-based practices, which we talked about, have been found to reduce stress and improve coping mechanisms. Now, these practices help individuals reframe negative thoughts and respond to challenges with greater resilience. And of course, there's that word again. But coping mechanisms, how do you cope with things, right? What is your go-to? What's your first choice there? And a lot of times it can be some real bad stuff, right? We can have some really tough negative coping mechanisms. But this gives you the opportunity to restructure all of that. To decide, again, we talked about the mindfulness practice, gives you the time to sit there and think about, how can I reframe this? What positive words can I use? Pain management. In the field of pain management, studies have shown that positive self-talk and relaxation techniques can help individuals tolerate and manage pain more effectively. This is particularly relevant in healthcare settings and chronic pain management. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but if you talk about how much something hurts, it hurts worse. If you just talk about it, it's like feeding it. It's not even just that you're feeding the pain or whatever. You're telling yourself over and over and over and over again how much this hurts, how bad this is, how unbearable it is, and et cetera, right? You're actually speaking the death into your own body or into your own mind. Maybe it's an emotional hurt. Maybe it's not even a physical hurt, right? Maybe it's an emotional hurt. But you will actually cause the pain to be worse. Whereas if you don't use that language, right? And that doesn't mean that and I talked about this Sunday, it doesn't mean that we are ignoring it and saying, oh yeah, no, I'm not hurting, when we're clearly in pain, right? When we're clearly hurting, whatever it may be. It doesn't mean ignoring it and denying it, right? but it does mean that we don't use that language. We don't encourage it, so to speak. We don't talk about how, oh God, how bad this hurts. And of course, if you broke your leg and the bone's sticking out, then I'm going to let you talk about whatever you want to talk about, right? I'm going to let you say what you want to, because I know that hurts. Health outcomes. Positive self-talk has actually been tied to a positive impact on physical health outcomes. So things like better adherence to healthy behaviors, exercise, diet, which of course results in good overall health. It can actually, and this goes back to the negative self-talk more so, but it can actually cause changes. And like I said, there's no disconnection between your body and your mind and your spirit. It's all one, okay? It's all working together. It's hand in glove, in glove, I guess. But it's all three parts working together, right? It's all happening simultaneously. And this negative self-talk can actually increase your blood pressure, okay? It can cause changes in things like your cholesterol. How crazy is that? It can cause problems like insulin resistance and things like that. It can cause problems with your blood sugar. I mean, that's how impactful the words that you're saying, of course the thoughts that you're having too, but the words that you're speaking, right? Because when you're speaking it, it's like I'm saying it because I believe it. I'm saying it out loud. It becomes tangible, and all of that energy flows into wherever I'm sending it, whether it's myself or someone else. So it can have this negative impact. Of course, it can have the positive impact too, if we're talking about these other alternatives. Let's see. Relationships, obviously. Neurological effects. This is a good one. Neuroimaging studies have shown that positive self-talk can activate brain regions with positive emotions and reward, specifically dopamine and serotonin, which are two neurochemicals in the brain that are, dopamine's kind of the, what do they call it? It's not the feel good. It's more of the pursuit neurochemical. It's the one that gives you the drive. It's the one that gives you that determination, right, to achieve something, to accomplish something. That's what dopamine does for you. Serotonin is a feel good neurochemical as well. But neuroimaging has shown that this positive self-talk can activate those positive emotions and reward centers in the brain, while negative self-talk can activate regions that are linked to stress and anxiety, which raises your cortisol levels, which again raises your blood pressure, which does all of these things, right? It changes in your hormones and all that stuff. So the impact, it's not just from a spiritual standpoint, it's not just mental, it's not just in your head, and it's not just to those people that are around you. It's every single part of who you are. All right, let's get into a little bit of scripture here. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 18. We're going to dive into something. Pastor and I got into a little line of thought here before we got started. I thought it was great. So we're going to throw that in there as well. Proverbs 12, 18, he says, "The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Proverbs 15:4. The soothing tongue, and the word in the Hebrew, it actually means healing. The healing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. I'm trying to remember what that word perverse meant. Let's look at that 1 second here. Proverbs 15:4. It was, distortion, crookedness, that's it, crookedness, to wrench or to twist, right? So the twisted tongue crushes the spirit. I mean, this stuff, and again, this is not a new idea, right? I'm not presenting anything new to you. This has been around for a long time. These guys figured out a long time ago, and we read it on Sunday, but the power of death and life is in the tongue. He that loves it shall eat the fruit thereof. Whatever it is that you're allowing to come out of your mouth, whatever words that you're speaking, just know that it's like a tree producing fruit, and you're going to eat it. Not just, and I'm sure you've been in those situations where you literally have eaten your words, right? Maybe you said this was going to happen or that was going to happen. Oh, this person's like this and they're like that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Or, yeah, well, I know what you were thinking when you said that, or I know what you were thinking when you did this, or when you didn't show up, or when you rejected me because, and then turns out, oh, well, actually, my grandma was in a car accident, so I had to go help her out, and there was a deer, and, granted, I did get the deer out of that, it's hanging on the wall now, but I mean, seriously, my grandma got hurt, and she was not feeling good, and she was scared to death, and, I had to run her to the hospital on my ET bicycle, and I put her in the basket, and we got there, and, she was all right, but I'm just saying, you thought you knew their intentions. You thought you knew what was going on. What'd you do? You ran off at the mouth because you got all emotional and everything. And next thing you know, you're eating a bad word sandwich. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so bad. But that's what we do, right? So many times we twist those things up. All right, let's go to James. And if you have the Mirror Study Bible, we're going to read out of the Mirror Study Bible, because I like the way that Francois words a lot of this. So James chapter 1. Yes. James 1, verse 26. Let's see. And maybe we'll back up a little bit here. Let's go to verse 23. James 1:23 says, anyone, again, this is the Mirror Study Bible, so if you don't have, if you got all you got's a King James, just listen. Anyone who hears the word sees the face of their birth as in a mirror. The difference between a mere spectator and a participator is that both of them hear the same voice and perceive in its message the face of their own genesis reflected there. They realize that they are looking at themselves, but for the one, it seems just too good to be true. This person departs back to the old way of seeing themselves and immediately forgets what manner of person they are, never giving another thought to the one they saw there in the mirror. The other is mesmerized by what they see, captivated by the effect of a law that frees them from the obligation to the old written code that restricted them to their own efforts and willpower. No distraction or contradiction can dim the impact of what is seen in the mirror concerning the law of perfect liberty, the law of faith that now frees one to get on with the acts of living the life of their original design. They find a new, spontaneous lifestyle, the poetry of practical living. Meaningless conversation, verse 26, is often disguised in religious eloquence. Just because it sounds sincere doesn't make it true. If your tongue is not bridled by what your heart knows to be true about you, then you cheat yourself. The purest and most uncompromising form of religious expression is found at its source. God is the Father of mankind. He inspires one to take a genuine interest in helping the fatherless and the widows in their plight, and to make sure that one's own life does not become blemished in the process. And that was verse 27 for added measure there. Now, let's move on to chapter 3. Okay. Chapter 3, in verse 5. As small a member the tongue might be, it can make great claims. A little fire can go out of control and consume a large forest. A tongue can strike like lightning and turn the harmony of your world into chaos. One little member can stain the whole body. It can disrupt the pattern of your design, taking its spark from the smoldering garbage heaps of Gehenna. From tigers to eagles to cobras to dolphins, humans have succeeded to curb the wild nature of beasts and birds, reptiles, and sea creatures. Yet no one can tame a tongue. No one can restrain the evil in its fatal venom. We can say beautiful things about God the Father, but with the same mouth curse a fellow human made in His mirror likeness. My friends, a blessing and a curse cannot originate from the same source. And he says it cannot, it should not, right? But it does, because we will do that all day long. And not only will we do it with others, but we'll do it with ourselves. And yes, it is wrong for you to praise God or say great things about God, or for me to stand up here and preach a beautiful sermon and then go out here and talk badly about other people or say horrible things to them, right? That's wrong. But it's also wrong to do that to me and to do that about me. And it's wrong for you to do it about you. It's not okay for you to come in here, say a prayer, sing a song, whatever, encourage other people even. Maybe you have conversation with people and you're encouraging them in the Lord and you're telling them, I'm going to pray for you, and you go home and pray for them and you pray beautiful prayers for them. Well, it's not okay for you to do all of that and then turn around and talk negatively about yourself. That's not all right. That is not God's intention. That was not His intention when He originally designed you. And when you look at the mirror of the Word, when you look into the Logos, when you look into Christ and you see yourself for who you are, you actually see the true you, the original you, and God's original intentions for you, with you, of you, whatever. And then you turn around and you say all these horrible things. You're not living in that intention, friends. You are not living out, fleshing out the things that God had in mind for you. So it's for us to look into this mirror and understand who we are and say the things about ourselves that God says about us. And when we do that, again, we're speaking either death or life. Pastor has talked about this in the past of learning. I learned the death language, right? I learned the death language of Adam, of sin, of the law. And then now I have to learn the new language of life. The language of Christ, the language of grace, the language of forgiveness, right? And it's difficult. We've got a brother that we're praying for now who found himself in the trappings of the law, right? In the trappings of the old way, of the old world. He's gotten himself entangled in the law of Moses, and now guess what he's dealing with? Guilt, shame, condemnation. He's living under the heaviness, the burden of trying to fulfill the law of Moses. And he should never have had to carry that burden. Never had to experience that whatsoever. And shame on those who put that on him, by the way. But now he has to unlearn all of that, unlearn all that language, and now he's got to learn this new language, right? He has to learn from the Logos what the Logos has to say about him. And when he learns that, he'll be free. He'll be set free. He'll be liberated, right? He'll be out from underneath that great boulder that is the law of Moses. So, not even a natural fountain produces both bitter and sweet water. As impossible as it is for a fig tree to bear olives and a vine to produce figs, so a fountain cannot yield salt and fresh water from the same source. Humility advertises wisdom. It shows in the quality of your conversation and actions. This distinguishes you with the reputation of someone who is acquainted with the wisdom and skilled in understanding. If there's any hidden agenda secretly driven by bitter jealousy and contention, You have nothing to be proud of. Your big talk sounds superficial and offers no disguise. I like that. Your big talk sounds superficial and offers no disguise. The fountain of your heart always shows. If you drink water, now you can't really, if it's clean, right, you can't tell the difference between fresh water and salt water. But as soon as you put it in your mouth, you know exactly what you're drinking, right? Caden had a little like sore come up in his mouth, and it's been a little while now, but he's like, yeah, it hurts to brush my teeth, this, that, and the other. And I said, well, if you'll swish some warm salt water every day, it'll go away. And that first time he did it, I thought he was going to throw up. He's like, oh, man, that's nasty. You know, I'm like, yeah, you don't want to drink that, right? But it'll make you feel better. But yeah, the fountain of your heart always shows. This wisdom does not originate from above, but it is clearly reduced to a kind that is earthly, ruled by the senses and dictated by demons. Wow. An environment of envy and rivalry is conducive to confusion and disorder of all kinds of worthless pursuits. The wisdom that originates from above sets the pace in innocence. It loves peace. It is always appropriate or polite, persuaded about that which is good, filled with compassion. These fruits are pure goodness and without discrimination. Seed always predicts the harvest. Righteousness inspires the kind of deeds of those who embrace peace. These are like seeds sown in fertile soil. I talked about Sunday how when I was younger, a lot of the sermons that I heard were talking about how horrible we were as humans. You know, how it was a miracle that God loved us. The only reason He loved us is because Jesus came and got in between the Father and humanity and said, no, Dad, don't punish them, punish me, right? That was the message that I heard over and over and over. And so it created this separation between me and God, and it also created this complex within me that said, I'm worthless, I'll never be good enough, I'll never be righteous enough, I'll never say the right thing, I'll never think the right thing, and if I do, it's just luck, and then the next thing that comes out of my mouth is going to be something horrible and sinful, and God's going to hate me and destroy me anyways. Those were the things that I was hearing. And so my little 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15-year-old heart heard all of this, took it all in, and guess what? It began to grow. The words that come out of your mouth, they're like seeds. And we already talked about the fruit, right? Whatever you love to talk bad about people, you're going to eat that fruit. You're going to eat it. You're going to harvest that. What is the scripture? Oh, man. Yes, absolutely. Do not be mocked, right? Or God will not be mocked, rather. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap. Okay, well, this is true in this case when it comes to the words that are coming out of your mouth. And you can reap a harvest of goodness and love and mercy and kindness and forgiveness and all those things, or you can reap this, the anxiety and stress and fear and depression and hatred and all those things. The death language, right? The death fruit, or you can reap the life fruit. But the seeds that are coming out, the seeds that you're speaking into other people's lives or into your life, into your own being, that's what's going to be produced. And the seed always tells the fruit, right? If I know it's an apple seed and I put it in the ground, I'm going to get an apple tree. There's no doubt about it. I'm not going to get a peach tree. Okay? So, let's go to, now this is a New Testament idea we just talked about, but this is also found in the Old Testament. All right? Proverbs chapter 22, verse 17. Oh, man. Now, James said you can't say, or was that, oh man, is that James or John? James said that you can't say that you love God and hate your brother. That was John. Yep. John said you can't say that you love God and hate your brother. You're not of God when you do that, right? But the same goes for yourself. You can't say you love God and hate you. It's backwards. God lives in you. By extension, you are a part of God. If you show yourself hatred or you're angry with you, you're resentful towards yourself, you're being that way towards God. It's not just you, but it is God Himself that's being affected. And I think it's more of a situation of heartbreak, right? Where God becomes heartbroken over the way that you see you, the way that you treat you, the way that you talk about you, the way that you talk about others as well, obviously. All right, 22:17. Let me read this too real quick. Ephesians 4:29. Paul said, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Hey, that doesn't just apply to you talking to or about other people. It talks that's you too. That's for yourself. Okay? Whatever your needs are, build yourself up. Don't tear yourself down. All right. Proverbs 22. "Bow down thine ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply thine heart unto my knowledge. For it is a pleasant thing if thou keep them within thee. They shall withal be fitted in thy lips." That thy trust may be in the Lord, I have made known to thee this day, even to thee. Have I not written to thee excellent things in counsels and knowledge, that I might make thee know the certainty of the words of truth, that thou mightest answer the words of truth to them that send unto thee? Let's read that one more time. "Bow down thy ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply thine heart unto my knowledge. For it is a pleasant thing if thou keep them within thee. They shall withal be fitted in thy lips. That thy trust..." Let's talk about buttered sausage. Have you guys seen Gary Busey lately? I mean, this guy is off the charts. He said, "I don't buy," what did he say? I don't buy jam. Yeah, I don't buy jam. I buy honey and I kiss it on the lips. I buy honey. Good Lord, have mercy. Jesus, help that man. So he said, "For it's a pleasant thing if thou keep them within thee. They shall withal be fitted in thy lips, that thy trust may be in the Lord. I have made known to thee this day, even to thee. Have not I written to thee excellent things in counsels and knowledge, that I may make thee know the certainty of the words of truth, that thou mightest answer the words of truth to them that send unto thee." What is it that God says about you? Those are the things that you need to learn. Okay? The things that, now, I can tell you, if you just go read the words of Jesus, that's a pretty good place to start about what God has to say about you, okay? That you're His dwelling place. You're His home. You're His abode. You're the place that He finds rest and refuge in. You're the place that, like Brent said, He came and He pitched His tent in our backyard because He wanted to have an eternal camping trip with us, okay? He wanted to be with us forever. That's a good place to start right there. He called you His home. Okay, so the words of truth that you need to learn are the things that God had to say about you. And those things that you learn, when you have someone come and ask you, right? Those that send unto thee. Well, who sends to me? Well, a lot of times I inquire about myself to myself, right? A lot of times there are parts of me that are coming to me and just like, okay, I know I sound like a crazy person, right? But it happens. I know it happens to you whether you say it or not. You're all nuts anyways. So there's this part of you that comes to you and says, "Who do you think you are? doing this or doing that or saying this or saying that, you're an imposter. Boom. Immediately, right? Y'all, I mean, imposter syndrome, like that's my thing, right? Imposter syndrome. You know what imposter syndrome is? It's like when you're doing something and you, inside of yourself, you're like, there's no way I should be doing this. I'm not qualified to do this. I can't possibly, blah, blah, blah. Right? It's all that language going on. And you're freaking out. And then you feel like you're outside of your body because you're not really being you, right? That's imposter syndrome. And so there's this dissociation that takes place. And a part of you comes to you and says, who do you think you are doing this? Who do you think you are to stand up and say that? Who do you think you are to be in a relationship with this person or that person? You can't be friends with them because of X, Y, Z, A, B, C. You did this, you did that, you've been here, you've been there, right? You've been connected to this crowd or that crowd. They don't know your reputation. They don't even, you don't qualify for this. They don't know your qualifications. You lied on your resume. What are you talking about, right? That's that imposter that comes to you and says all of those things. Well, when those parts of me come to me and make those accusations, if I know the truth about me, if I know the truth about what God says about me, then I can answer that petition, right? I can answer that question. Who do you think you are? Well, I'll tell you who I am. I'm a child of the living God. I'm a son of God. I have been qualified. He has fitted those words in my lips. And it's the words of life, right? It's honey, I kissed it. All right, go to Ecclesiastes. Go to Ecclesiastes chapter 12. This is an extension of this Proverbs passage. Thank you to Pastor Kevin. It's a good one. Verse 9, he says, moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge, yea, he gave good heed and sought out and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find acceptable words. That which was written was upright, even words of truth. The words of the wise are as goads and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. Now, our shepherd is Christ, right? He's the good shepherd. And further, by these, my son, be admonished. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Now, Jesus said there are two commandments that sum up the entire book, and that is to love the Lord your God and to love your neighbor as you love yourself, which means I have to love myself. I've got to love me if I'm going to love other people. I know that's hard for y'all to understand. I know that's hard for y'all to believe. It's hard for you to flesh out. Because it's like, well, no, but I do love so-and-so. Oh, but no, I do love my spouse. And I do love my children. It's like, okay, yes, I believe you. I believe 100% that you love them. But how much greater would your love for them be if you loved you? How much greater would your love for other people be if you loved you? You know, one thing that we can see about Christ is that He did love Himself. He did love Himself. And He loved His Father. And it was very evident that He loved other people. It was manifested in so many different ways. Whether it was the things that, the kind words that He said to people, the healings that took place, the miracles that took place, right? Lifting people out of their horrible situation, taking people out of their pits. But it's clear that He loved Himself. And He was loved by the Father and did nothing but exude that love to other people. And He rejected anyone who decided not to agree with that or walk in that, right? Which, by the way, came down to that religious crowd. The religious crowd doesn't want you to love you. The religious crowd doesn't want you necessarily to love other people because they need to qualify first. right? I'm just saying, I mean, the religious people want to catch clean fish instead of just catching all the fish and then cleaning them up when we get them in the boat, right? By the way, it's not your job to clean the fish anyways. That's God's job. That's them and God's job. That's a relationship between them and God. You want to help somebody clean up their language? Well, you got to teach them how to pray to God. And that's as far as your hands should get into that mess. Let them work that out between themselves and God. Work out your own salvation in fear and trembling. Okay. Now, I got one last little idea I want to try to string together here. I don't know how well this is going to go, but we're going to try it. Let me read just a couple more scriptures that I had in mind as far as reaping that fruit, right? I had this in here. Galatians 6, 7 to 9. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And I mean, that does apply to your language as well. Speak positively to yourself. Speak compassionately to yourself and to others. Right? Speak love and grace and mercy and forgiveness to one another and to yourself. The fruit of righteousness is a tree of life, and the one who is wise saves lives. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on His law day and night. Now, that would have been the law for David, but it would be the words of Christ for you. What law did Christ present? Well, it's loving God. It's loving your neighbor. It's loving yourself. It's being a peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers, right? Blessed are the poor in spirit. I mean, it's those things. It's dwelling on that day and night. The person is like a tree planted by the streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Whatever they do prospers. Speak life to yourself. Speak life into other people. This idea of the Logos, right? We've talked about it ad nauseum, and I think that you could talk about it ad nauseum-er if you wanted to, right? Because there's so much to be found in that idea, and it's such an ancient idea. It's such a great idea. The Logos, the living Word, the Word that moves, the Word that provides action, the Word that brings life and creation and creativity and mobility and all these things. That's what the Logos is. So what do? Well, we learn from the Logos how to be the Logos and how to speak the Logos. So life and creativity and all those things, orderliness and all that good stuff, right? That is what we learn to do, and we learn that from Christ. Now, Jesus died on the cross, died a gruesome death, had a horrible period of time there leading up to that on top of it. But in His death, there was compassion. And it wasn't so much, like I said, in those moments where He was being falsely accused or beaten or nailed to a cross. That wasn't the place of compassion, right? But there was compassion in His death. There was compassion in His suffering and in those horrible circumstances. The first bit of compassion that we see, albeit compelled, is that of Simon, the Cyrenian. He is forced, basically, by the Roman guard to help Jesus carry His cross. But you can imagine if you were standing in the crowd that day or standing on the street that day, whatever, and this person told you to, hey, help him carry, or whatever, however it went down, right? Somebody get over here and help him carry his cross. And you're the person, right? I don't know how you could not look on the person of Jesus, whether or not you knew He was a criminal, right? Innocent or not, you're going to assume He's guilty because He's carrying a cross. But how could you not look on Him with compassion in that moment? You're watching somebody suffer. It doesn't matter if they've done right or wrong. And then there was the compassion of the guard who tried to give him the gall, right? The vinegar and the hyssop mixed together, which is like a, to help with the pain and all that. Anesthetic. And of course, Christ didn't take it, but the guard did try to give it to him. Now, whether that was out of mockery or what, I don't know, but there does seem to be some extension of compassion there. And I like to think maybe it was the guy who said, "Oh my God, we killed the Son of God," right? You remember that part of the story. And then there was the compassion of the women who took the body of Jesus and they took the time to clean Him, dress the wounds, and to wrap Him in the grave clothes, to put perfume on Him and prepare the body for the burial. And then there was Joseph of Arimathea, who, yes, he was a follower of Christ and a supporter and all these things, but he had such great compassion on Christ that he was willing to give up his own burial site. Something that, at least in that day, that it cost him a lot of money, I'm sure. A fortune to have a special place to be buried. And there's this compassion that's shown from this man who, yes, like I said, he was a follower, but at the same time, he didn't really know Jesus. And he extends this place, this gift, right, for Christ to rest. And I just wonder tonight if, you wouldn't have the same compassion on yourself. Whatever the circumstances are. However guilty or not guilty you may be, or you may feel. Maybe you feel like you're hanging on a cross and you wish somebody would just give you a little anesthetic, something to numb the pain. Maybe you feel like you've already been bested by life, completely defeated, and your body is just laying there. You just wish somebody would just come and care for you. Or maybe you're in the place where you just need somewhere to rest. And I wonder if you wouldn't just give that to yourself. Would you be a cross bearer for yourself? Would you be someone who supports you in all your pain and all your suffering and all your agony, whatever it is you're going through, instead of cutting you down? Instead of calling you a criminal, instead of calling you worthless, instead of spitting on you, instead of hitting you and beating you and pushing you out of the city, would you be kind enough to help yourself carry the load? Stop standing outside of you, criticizing you. Would you be kind enough to offer yourself a form of medication? Maybe that's literally. Maybe it's figuratively. Would you be kind enough to dress yourself, clean up those wounds, wrap yourself up, put some perfume on you? Would you be kind enough to lay yourself down to rest? This all comes from a place in your heart where it wells up and it pours out of your mouth. It begins with the thoughts and the words that we speak. It begins with whatever's in your heart, right? That's what's going to come out anyways. But it begins with learning to change that language from death to life so that you can begin to eat the fruit of a tree of life and not a tree of death. Right? I hope that you've gotten something out of this little series or whatever you want to call it. Again, thank you so much for tuning in online. Please don't forget to click the like button and hit our little Subsplash link there. We appreciate all your gifts. And if you would, say it with me. I love Him because He first loved me. God bless you.